Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here. My next Airspeed Reads Naruto. This is going to be for volume 51 of the manga, which is called Sasuke vs. Danzo. We cover another 10 chapters in this volume. We get 474 to 483, a Hokage's decision, Madara's true worth, Sasuke vs. Danzo, do not speak of Itachi, Sasuke Susanoo, the Izanagi, sacrifice, the death of Danzo, just one more time, master and student reunited. So, yeah, a really nice cover here, definitely represents kind of what the overall volume is about. It is the Sasuke versus Danzo fight that we cover in full, and then we get a little bit at the start, a little bit at the end with more Naruto, Sakura, what's going on there stuff. So overall, I really like this volume. Yes, it is primarily one fight which makes up the majority of the volume, but it's a good fight. It's a unique fight. It's different than a lot of the other ones that we've got before, because fights in Naruto tend to be relatively even back and forths with jutsu of like, oh, I have you on the ropes, turn the tables, I have you on the ropes, turn the tables. This one is more like Sasuke just goes like full force at Danzo and like basically kills him multiple times, and we have no idea why Danzo seems to be still alive, and then we get the Izanami reveal, and that's kind of where it all kind of comes out about. So Izanagi, sorry, I keep mixing those two up because they're so similar. Izanagi is this one, but we get that reveal about that power, and that's a unique way to kind of build a fight around, about the fact that like you have a character who can basically effectively be immortal for a certain amount of time, and it's just about whether will Sasuke's really high power Susanoo run out, or will the immortality power of Danzo run out before then. And there's some unique stuff that goes on there, as we get a little bit of an insight into Danzo's fighting style, but primarily you see that this is a Danzo who has basically come to rely very heavily on experimentation through working with Orochimaru, and he definitely seems to have placed more importance on his special powers as opposed to his like ninja skills here, and you can sort of see the wrong paths that he took. And in terms of his character like being killed off in this volume, it makes him into a sort of a tragic character in a way, because you see that he just became lost in this kind of way of constantly thinking that everything in the world needed to be figured out through darkness, through the approach from the shadows, that he lost sight of the fact that sometimes you can deal with stuff in the light, that you can do things a good way. And it just spoke to kind of how changed he became over time, constantly having to do the darker things, whereas there was always Sarutobi there to represent the lighter things that he could never do, that Sarutobi was kind of always in front of him making a decision beforehand, and he always had to be the opposite to that. And you can see that because he's so often never had to make those light decisions, he can only do it the other way. And you see that here when he finally becomes Hokage, and then he feels that he has to influence the Gokage Summit by using Shisui's eye to be made leader, to force everyone into an alliance and do things that way, whereas he actually had a chance to be elected leader without doing that. So it just speaks to his kind of lack of faith in the world, and I suppose him being in a way like the complete opposite to like Naruto, who has a lot of faith in people and just like he's kind of willing to kind of put it out there that like, trust me and I will kind of bring balance to the world in a way, and Danzo kind of really doesn't do that. So it's kind of like, in a way, Danzo is very opposite in terms of the way he sees things to Naruto, but they never really emphasize too heavily the Naruto Danzo stuff. But anyway, we'll go through this a little bit, kind of page by page. So Sai's reveal at the very start of the book is basically just that your classmates intend to dispose of Sasuke themselves, and that Sakura's whole kind of act basically from the last volume was to basically try and distract Naruto from kind of wanting to go after Sasuke, that trying to remove that burden, that promise from him, so that he wouldn't basically hurt himself going forward. And it's at this point Kakashi figures out that Sakura is going off to try and kill Sakura is going off to kill Sasuke on her own, and we see that Sai kind of to some extent blames himself for this, that he was the one who maybe spoke a little bit out of line, but and kind of forced her down this path. But ultimately, it was something he felt he needed to do. That he was aware of how much this quest for Sasuke was hurting Naruto, and he felt that something needed to be done. And asking Sakura to, turn around the promise was something that was needed. And we begin to see the effects that all this kind of, I suppose, mental anguish is having on Naruto. He's just found out about the truth behind Itachi and, like, I suppose, the ways that Sasuke actually feels at this point in time. He's only just pretty much come off the stuff with pain. Now he's suddenly being told that Sasuke has been branded a criminal by the entire world. Everyone wants to kill him. And even his friends have decided to make that decision themselves to kill Sasuke. And he feels like he's the only one who's kind of still on that side. And then this is compounded by the fact that Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro show up. And Gaara kind of talks to Naruto and kind of, again, pretty much says the same thing that, like, we saw in the last volume that Gaara attempted to, like, get through to Sasuke and kind of show that, like, there is a good path for you, but Sasuke's kind of too far gone, and he says, like, if he ever stands up against us, I won't show mercy. And that kind of trying to point out that, like, I'm your friend. Sasuke doesn't, see you as that anymore. He just seeks darkness. So kind of some interesting kind of things for sure kind of coming into play here. And it's pretty much that's the kind of gist of this kind of first section of that, and then we primarily transition into the majority of the fight as we go on here. But I will cover most of the Naruto story now, then I can focus it for the rest of the video on the Danzo fight. So as that fight begins, what we get is that Kakashi's obviously going to go after Sakura to try and stop her, or at the very least stop Sasuke from potentially fighting back against her. As we see, Yamato is going to be left behind to guard Naruto, so he doesn't come after them. And Naruto is just completely lost in thought here, just his mind swirling about everything that's just happened. He's just been informed about the fact that this stuff is happening, and they're going to, like, not allow him to participate in everything, and everything is just kind of going against, I suppose, what he actually really wants to do. And he just collapses basically under all of this stress. And it's an interesting kind of position to put your main character in that, yes, most series often put your character in this sort of a position where they kind of have a kind of a mental struggle. And we've sort of seen that with Naruto before, but for him to just be in this position where, like, he is the hero of the village, he's had this, like, huge development, and now all of a sudden all of this stuff is just pushed towards him, and he just, collapses, hyperventilates, kind of faints basically under the pressure. And I like this decision because it just highlights that he has a lot going on, that it really does highlight the amount of pressure he feels he's under to try and get Sasuke back, that the amount of pressure he puts on himself primarily, and how he feels that, in a way, Sasuke's moving too far away from him, that he's going too far down a dark path, that he won't ever kind of get back up there. So with Sakura, what she ends up doing is that she has, like, Lee, Kiba, and Sai is also with her. And she basically wants to go off to see Sasuke on her own, and they know what she's about to do, but she still ends up kind of getting away, kind of putting them to sleep with kind of a powerful sleeping kind of poison. And she basically goes up to Sasuke after his fight with Danzo, and basically just says, I've come to join you, Sasuke, I've gone rogue from Konoha. And to some degree he's willing to kind of take her in, and that, like, okay, finish this one off, pointing to Karin, who's obviously been injured by Sasuke in the fight. If you do that, I'll accept that you're for real. And obviously she's not going to do this. Sakura is, to some extent, willing to go with Sasuke to be with him, but she won't go down this path. And it's here that she really sees just how much Sasuke has actually changed, or at least the extent that he's willing to go to fulfill his goals. And obviously she doesn't know the truth about Itachi at this point in time, so she doesn't have, like, I suppose, full context behind why he is this way. But for her to see him like this, it is a kind of big moment of just, like, no, that is not the Sasuke I remember. I have to kind of end this. And she's about to potentially stab him when Sasuke goes to stab her from behind with Chidori as Kakashi arrives on the scene. And we set up for the next volume that Kakashi is going to fight Sasuke here, that he's going to take on the burden for, I suppose, the other teammates, Naruto and Sakura, and kind of step up to face his student who has gone down a darker path. Something he feels he didn't do before, and he notes the connection that he now knows what Orochimaru felt. He now knows what Sarutobi felt, having to deal with Orochimaru, obviously way back earlier on in the series, but a master having to fight their student who has gone down a different path. And this is the fight that's about to happen, and he feels, to some degree, he could have like more forcefully kept Sasuke on this path if he had handled the previous situation just prior to Sasuke going off to join Orochimaru differently. But it's coming down to a fight now, and it's interesting because obviously through this volume, Kakashi has effectively been made the next Hokage with Danzo dead and the betrayal that the other Kage felt. So this is like Kakashi basically just about to be inaugurated as the 6th Hokage going into battle against Sasuke, who has been through so many battles. Madara has already established at this point that he has basically lost most of the light in his eyes, so he's effective way of saying he's nearly blind. He's nearly used up the useful power of his mangekyous. So setting up the idea that he's probably going to need an eye transplant soon, because he refused the Itachi eye transplant before, but now he could get them. So yeah, the last thing to cover is the Danzo and Sasuke fight, which is the majority of the middle of the book. And as I said before, it's a very unique fight in that it's not really even at all. Danzo has a few very powerful attacks, and it's very clear that he is a very, very powerful shinobi. But Sasuke's power with the various mangekyo techniques, the Tsukiyomi, the Amaterasu, and then of course the Susanoo, which he kind of perfects in a way during this fight, just gives him a power level that is beyond Danzo. So you have like a veteran, experienced ninja who is somewhat on the level of a Sarutobi, but maybe not as powerful, who has basically imbued himself with like all of these Sharingans. So we get to reveal that his right hand is basically covered with I think 10 Sharingan, plus he still has Shisui's eye. So he basically has 11 different Sharingan, but only one of them kind of has like a Mangekyo technique power. So it kind of highlights in this battle the fact that the Mangekyo is still recharging throughout this entire fight. The difference between someone who has achieved the level of Mangekyo versus standard Sharingan, that even though Danzo has 10 of them, he can only stay in the fight by using the Izanagi technique consistently over the course of this battle. And that is ultimately the key reveal here. We get that basically himself and his own kind of stuff in the background, along with working with Orochimaru in the background, has basically allowed Danzo to have all these eyes implanted within him, plus also have him be imbued with some of the cells of the first Hokage, Hashirama. So he is physically, that's why he's physically, even though he's really old, able to keep up with Sasuke to a degree, but he basically has to, sacrifice all of these eyes to stay in the battle. And the technique of Izanagi is very interesting in that it's this, they established this effectively this genjutsu that blurs the line between reality and fantasy, and that you can make all adverse effects that happen to you effectively become a dream, but all the things you do to your opponent in that same time are real. So it's a genjutsu that you perform on yourself to save yourself from harm, save yourself from death, but that it only kind of reverses time, I suppose, to a degree for you. And I think the thing that in the background that this also hints towards, they never really pointed out all that much, but given that we, as far as we're aware right now, think that Tobi is Madara Uchiha, and he only has one Sharingan as far as we're aware, I think what we're meant to kind of constantly think this entire time with the reveal of the Izanagi technique now is that he survived his battle with Hashirama because he used the Izanagi, and Hashirama left that battle leaving Madara dying. not knowing that he had a technique to kind of keep himself alive. And even though that turns out to, I suppose to some extent, to actually be the truth, and that I think the actual real Madara did actually use Izanagi to keep himself alive, but it's this kind of tease about the fact that, like, oh, it's actually a different reasoning behind why Artobi only has one eye, and it makes that reveal all the more kind of powerful when it actually happens, because when you really think about it, they kind of were almost leading you down this path of thinking that, oh, this explains exactly that this is indeed Madara, and he survived that battle because of this technique, which he just tells us about now. That's why he only has one eye, because he used up one of them. But anyway, the conversations that they have over the course of this volume it's definitely interesting in that you have a very kind of vengeful Sasuke trying to get the truth out of Danzo about what actually happened, and then you have a very obviously dark for the good of the world Danzo kind of talking, and he kind of comes across as the good guy in this situation to a degree, but obviously a good guy who has lost himself in darkness as well. And it's interesting to see the way he kind of sees Itachi, that, oh, you know Itachi's story, so that means he, in the end, betrayed Konoha because that story was meant to be a secret, and all this sort of stuff that kind of infuriates Sasuke, and it kind of leads to the fight being so aggressive, and in the end, obviously, the way the fight comes to an end, very clever ending to the fight, that the Izanami, he keeps it active for so long that it keeps closing the eyes every, like, 1 minute. So he gets down to the end, and Danzo thinks he still has one eye left to survive one last attack, as Sasuke is performing his last attack. He grabs Karin, basically, kind of thinking he's about to be killed, and then it's revealed that actually Sasuke had put Danzo under a genjutsu that made it look like he still had one left when it was actually closed, and uses that to his advantage to basically take out Danzo, take him by surprise. He's not prepared to use his Shisui's eye to use for Izanami Nagi, and that it's a really clever ending to the fight, that he just takes him completely by surprise with this kind of subtle use of genjutsu instead of this massive, huge genjutsu. And then I suppose it shows the cruelty of Sasuke as well, that he stabs through Karin to kind of get this victory, and is basically like, you were slow enough to get captured, so you deserve to be killed, basically. And we get a little flashback with Karin where, like, we basically just reveal, like, how she first met Sasuke when he was younger, and she saw him as this kind of beacon of light in a way, and she really liked his smile, and how that has completely changed from basically the way he is now. And it's a real highlight, I suppose, that this is how far he's gone down that path of darkness ever since it's become, he's been able to get the power level to actually take on Itachi and now to defeat Danzo, that something has to change hugely for him to go back to being as he was before. And the fact that he then goes to kill Sakura shows further how much he's fallen. And I suppose the big thing we're building towards here is that Naruto is on his way to the Kakashi-Sasuke fight. What is Naruto going to say to Sasuke now, given that everything that's happened and all the stuff he's been asked to think about? So really, really interesting stuff as what we're building towards. These couple of volumes, there's a lot of important fights and stuff that happen, but I think the most important stuff is ultimately that there's a lot of character stuff going on here, with characters moving into the way they feel going into the final arc, the war arc, and what their kind of goals are heading into that, and it's very interesting. But yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about volume 51 of the manga. Solid, really cool fight, unique fight between Danzo and Sasuke. And then the other stuff continues to be really interesting, with just Naruto collapsing under the weight of everything, that the pressure that he's under, Kakashi stepping up to fight Sasuke, and then Sakura kind of making her big move, and it not quite working out, but still being quite emotional, that she sees him at a point where she's kind of willing to kind of give up and kind of take him out and take out the person she loves, because he no longer is that person anymore. So really interesting stuff. But yeah, that's been the volume 51 review. Thanks for watching this video, and bye.